Good morning, good morning. Oh, thank you. Welcome to the launch of Interfaith America. Thank you so much, yes. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning. My name is Mary Ellen Geis. I'm Vice President of Strategic Initiatives with Interfaith America. I really can't convey how grateful we are to all of you for choosing to spend your time with us this morning. This is an incredibly momentous moment for us at the organization. We're so grateful to be surrounded by friends. Thank you all so much for being here with us this morning. I want to say a special welcome to the folks who are joining us by live stream. Thank you all so much for choosing to be here with us this morning as well. And we're just really grateful for the opportunity to celebrate this moment. I'd like to say thank you so much to the colleagues at Georgetown University and the staff at the Center on Faith and Justice. This team has been amazing, fantastic partners to us in planning this event. Thank you so much for hosting us. I was saying to a number of you this morning, Georgetown University has actually hosted us at a number of momentous moments in our organizational life. So it only makes sense that we're here again this morning celebrating this transition. Thank you so much to Georgetown. To start us off, yes, thank you. I'd like to invite up Reverend Jim Wallace to say a special welcome to kick us off.
Here we are in person. Isn't that a big deal to be in person? Like when my students were finally in person and I say, "You're taller than I thought." Or, "You've got a face." So you've already convened us, Ebru. That talk out there, do you see how we were just buzzing? All these connecting conversations in person for the first time. Well, welcome to one of my favorite places at Georgetown University, Riggs Library, a special place for a special event hosted by our new Center on Faith and Justice. This is an appropriate place. One reason is the banners. Have you seen the banners? I walk under banners every day on the way to class, outside, all over the campus. They say, "Faith that does justice." They say, "Women and men for others." They switch that around, which is good. They say, "Education for the common good." Those banners mean a lot to me. I never saw banners like that at Harvard, I'll just say. So this is the right place for us to be today. This is a launch, an inauguration of Interfaith America. This is the 20th anniversary, hard to believe, Hebrew, 20th anniversary of the Interfaith Youth Core, which many of us have known and loved for these 2 decades. But this is not just a name change. Let's be clear about that. This is a transition. This is an evolution. This is a further, deeper articulation of an interfaith voice and vision for America. And for us at the Center on Faith and Justice, this is a natural event for us to host and convene. We do public gatherings, private ones, and special events like this to strengthen and sustain the role of faith for justice. This country needs our faith. This world needs our faith. There's some things that won't be accomplished except by faith. So it's an honor to host this event on behalf of my dear friend Ebru Patel, who I have known since the very beginning, and before that, of IFYC. We've enjoyed a long-standing partnership and more friendship. So Ebru has been and continues to be for me a great sign of hope for the faith that does justice, which is actually that Jesuit mission statement all over campus on the banners. Now, I'll just say it, neither Ebru nor I are Jesuits. But I know Georgetown University is smiling on both of us here today. So what I've always admired about IFYC is, and now Interfaith America, is the hopeful vision that an organization articulates and then makes real through its work. one thing to say things, another thing to do things. Our faith traditions say that. So we were honored to work as collaborators in the recent COVID-19 vaccination mobilization, which Interfaith America joined the Face for Vaccine efforts that we helped to coordinate. What was already becoming Interfaith America immediately understood the opportunity for multi-faith engagement around a critical moment of national crisis. They mobilized their network quickly, you really did, and effectively to take concrete action around an urgent national priority. It's the kind of meaningful action that shows the nation what is possible when we think about our nation's religious diversity, not as a threat, but as a fundamental gift and strength. So together we were able to help with critical issues of vaccine access and hesitancy among vulnerable populations, according to our friends at the White House and many other people around the country. So today's hopeful event is an opportunity again to reflect both on the idea and the possibilities of Interfaith America as an organization, and I would say IBU as an aspiration as well. So we're all part of that aspiration here. I could tell in the hallway all the excitement we're feeling today. And all our voices, all of them, are part of the vision, and all of our hands are part of making the vision real. So thank you all for being with us today, and thank you for your part in building an Interfaith America.
Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome, Reverend Wallace, and for really understanding the vision of this organization. To further bless this ceremony, I'd like to invite up 5 of Georgetown's faith leaders to share a reflection with us. Father David Hollenbach, Rabbi Rachel Gartner, Imam Yahya Hendi, Dr. Raj Vihari Sharon, and the Venerable Ishan Chian.
Let us pray. In the name of the God who has created all human beings equal in rights, duties, and dignity, and who has called them to live together as brothers and sisters. In the name of innocent human life that God has forbidden us to kill, affirming that whoever kills a person is like one who kills the whole of humanity, and whoever saves a person is like one who saves the whole of humanity. In the name of the poor, the destitute, the marginalized, and those most in need, to whom God has commanded us to help, let us pray. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe, in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey toward your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day and today. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Rachel Gartner, and I'm not a Jesuit either, but I have been called Father Gartner once or twice here by mistake. Please join me in prayer. Dear one, our God, Mohodim hanachnu lach. We are deeply grateful for the opportunity for us all to gather together and through our presence and our commitment to sanctify this moment in the life of one of the nation's most inspiring and impactful multi-faith movements for Tikkun Olam, for healing our broken world. May our kavanot, our holy intentions for this gathering, and indeed for all the work of Interfaith America, be just and loving, joyful and invigorating, genuine and indeed holy. Bless the work of our hands so that through our hands this morning's worthy intentions become real, coming into ever fuller life through our commitment and recommitment day after day after day. Be'orcha nir'ei or. May Interfaith America remain ever mindful of its spiritual purpose, to shine your divine or your divine light into the world through the gifts of self that we bring to one another. Allow us to center our interfaith relationships on honesty and empathy, and to ground our interfaith leadership on courage and on care. As we travel through the sometimes turbulent waters of engaging faithfully across religious difference, may we be guided by wisdom and patience, passion for our common commitments, and compassion for one another and for ourselves. Hashivenu v'nashuva. May our collective deeds be measured only by how faithfully they pursue your vision for all your people and for our planet. Ma'aseh adenu konenehu. Lift up the work of Interfaith America in anything and everything they do for peace and justice and wholeness. We ask only that you be with them and with us all on that journey. And that will be dayenu, more than enough. Amen.
I am not a priest, I'm not a rabbi, but often called Rabbi Hindi and Father Hindi. My friends, don't be surprised. At Georgetown, we believe in miracles. Georgetown became the first American university to hire a rabbi, the first to hire a Muslim chaplain, the first to hire a Hindu chaplain. And you can see on the stage where we have Buddhists, we represent Interfaith America. We represent this beautiful country and the vision that founded us as a nation. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate. In the Quran we read, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس. There is no good in most of their talks except those who order for charity to be given, commitment to the common good of all, and reconciliation between people. Let us pray. Almighty God, allow us today and forever realize that the clash of ideas is the sound of freedom, and that in diversity lies our unity. Let there be love, which will build peace if people feel the needs of others as their own, and share what they have with others, especially the values of mind and love. May our love of God open doors for unconditional hospitality for all. May our joint hands free more divine energy lost in the maze of wars and conflicts. May our faith in God and our love of one another overcome uncertainty of the future. May our clarity about who we are lead the way of respect of others' certainty of their own path. May our mutual respect of each other shed light on days of immense darkness. May our open-mindedness bear witness to the great possibilities of the future. For a compassionate world, lead us, God, all with your holy presence to bring about, through Interfaith America, politics of justice, economics of equity, and covenant of community. We ask you, God, to bless this institution, Interfaith America. Bless its leaders. Bless its future. For within you is our faith, and on you is our reliance. Ya Salamu, Ya Rahmanu, Ya Rahimu, Ya Wadudu, Ya Alimu, Ya Allah. O peaceful, O merciful, O caring, O loving, O kind, O embracing God, the dominion is yours forever and ever. And with a united voice, let us all say, Amen. Amen.
Dearest sisters, brothers, and non-binary kin, namaste to each and every one of you. You know, the launch of Interfaith America represents for me a beacon of hope for those of us who come from the various dharmic backgrounds, both non-theist and theist. We've been longing to see equitable, pluralistic societies which are intent on healing, reason, and compassion. The work of Interfaith is arduous in some respects, and I know this because I'm a Londoner originally. So this morning I turn to the closing lines of a great text that is actually non-theistic in its origins, the Rigveda. They were composed to address various First Nations groups of people who had come together to form some of the earliest multi-traditional towns of South Asia around in the early centuries of the first millennium before the Common Era. So to those words I turn and I ask, let us close our eyes and take a very deep breath in and just exhale. Invoke in your minds that which brings you into a state of transcendent bliss. Om Sangachadvam Samvadadvam Samvo Manasi Janatam Deva Bhagan Yatha Purve Sanjanana Upasate Samaniva Akuti Samana Hrudayani Vaha Samanamastu vo mano yatha vassus sahasati. Come together, speak with one another. Let us learn about one another's mindsets, just as the spiritual elders of old did as they sat undertaking their own spiritual practices. May our minds be in union with the thought and the emotions of the wise, sharing the common purpose of betterment. We invoke betterment. United as diverse peoples, we thus offer up our aspirations. Let our aim for universal betterment be one and single-pointed. Let our hearts be enjoined in this purpose. Thus, may we peacefully accomplish the task of betterment for all beings, and in peace, may we be better together in harmony. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May there be peace in the multiverse, peace in our communities, and peace within. Thank you. Let us open our eyes.
So this is a dedication verse from the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. 愿以此 功德庄严佛净土，上报四重恩，下济三途苦。若有见闻者，悉发菩提心，尽此一报身，同生极乐国。May all blessings generated from our practice adorn to the Buddha's Pure Lands, repaying the kindness of the awakened ones, the ancestors, and all beings. While aiding those suffering in all realms, may all who hear this Dharma bring forth bodhicitta, the resolve of awakening, as we purify and transform obstructive karma. May we join together in one body, heart, and mind, sustaining the bodhisattva intention in service of all. Namo Amitabha Buddha.
Thank you all so much for blessing this time together. At this time, I'm honored to invite Melissa Rogers to share some opening remarks. Melissa Rogers is the Executive Director of the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. As many of you know, she is a nationally known expert on religion and public life with a special expertise in religious liberty in the U.S. Constitution and the interplay of religion, law, policy, and politics. She has served in multiple presidential administrations as well as in significant academic, legal, and policy roles with far-reaching influences. But perhaps most importantly for those of us who are here today, Melissa is truly a tireless advocate and a generous partner in making religious diversity a positive contributor to American civic life. Melissa, thank you for all that you do and for taking the time to share your thoughts with us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that really kind introduction, Mary Ellen. It's wonderful to be here today. And thanks to my friend Ibu Patel and for this invitation, and Mary Ellen, the invitation to be with you on this really inspiring occasion. And also to my friend Jim Wallace. I'm so excited about this new center that he is building here at Georgetown. And thank all of you for helping to join in this very exciting occasion. And it's also my great privilege to see so many friends and colleagues through the years, far too many to mention. But thank you for all that you have contributed to my own life and what I've learned from you. It's just a privilege to be with you once again. And great to be together with you over the years to build this country to be stronger and more inclusive, more free, and more just. It's also my honor this morning to bring you greetings from our president, Joe Biden. President Biden often says that our country's greatest strength is and always has been our diversity. And that certainly includes our stunning religious diversity, which was on display just a moment ago and, of course, in this room so fully. Our nation is not only one of the most religiously diverse, it's one with remarkable religious peace across our religious differences. But we don't simply enjoy civic peace in the United States. In the United States of America, people of diverse faiths and beliefs make common cause on a regular basis. What a strength, what a gift, what a treasure. Now, in no small part, this achievement is the result of groundbreaking religious freedom promises enshrined in our country's founding documents. Here's one of those promises put very simply. There are no second-class faiths in the United States of America. No matter our faiths or beliefs, we stand before government as full and equal citizens. That promise provides an excellent foundation for working together authentically, equitably, and productively. Still, These are just promises on paper without commitment, without leadership, especially at a time of deep division and threats to our constitutional democracy. Governmental leaders, for one, must demonstrate, both in word and deed, that they are committed to equal rights to religious liberty for everyone in equal measure. So we have to ask, are elected leaders going to bat for the rights of Muslims as well as Methodists, Buddhists as well as Baptists? Is the sick child in our nation's public schools, does that sick child feel as welcome as the Seventh-day Adventist child in our nation's public schools? Is everyone able to practice their faith without fear in the United States of America? All public servants must take such questions very seriously. And we do too, of course, because the commitment and leadership of civil society leaders is also essential. And this is exactly what organizations such as Interfaith America provides. Its commitment to religious freedom for all in equal measure is unquestioned. Its success in bringing people together across deep differences has been demonstrated time and time again. Its ingenuity and impact has been noted across the country and around the world. Through storytelling and other strategies, the Interfaith America is able to bring us together across our differences, not asking us to set aside those differences, but to bring them to the table of conversation. And it does so through this, again, powerful storytelling feature. And I just have to say how powerful the story of its founder is, Ibu Patel, and how much I have appreciated his voice and been moved by his voice in the public square, as well as his friendship and support through the years. So thank you for the vision of Interfaith America coming together right now when it is so needed. As Jim mentioned earlier, we have already worked with these leaders in the Biden-Harris administration on COVID-19 efforts, among many others. And you will remember during the early stages of the vaccination effort, there was a great need for people that were trusted partners, that could bring people together who had concerns, who were big believers in the vaccine, people who were hesitant, people who may have said, no, I'm not doing this, to bring people together to talk and to have honest conversations with a generous spirit. And that's exactly what Interfaith America has done. And we simply could not have done our work without their partnership in that effort. So as it has been in the past, Interfaith America will strengthen our nation, making it more united, more just, and more free. And it's, as I said earlier, its expanded mission could not come at a better time. I go way back with Ibu and with Jim and many others of you, more years than we'd like to mention, I think. But when we began working together, I don't think any of us thought that this work would be easy. None of us did. But I think we all know now that this work has never been harder, but it's also never been more important. So let me thank all of you for coming together across your differences in background and belief here today, and those on the live stream. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but let me say it anyway. There's so much that unites us if we are only willing to look for that unity and work side by side. At a time of too much polarization, far too much, thank you for continuing to defend each other's rights, no matter the climate that you find when you go to do so, for seeking common ground, and for considering how we can grow this precious, precious movement that is illustrated and embodied in this room. This conference gives us so much hope. President Biden often says that America can be defined in a single word: possibilities. In this room and all across the United States and through the live stream and maybe across the world, there are so many powerful possibilities right here. It's my hope and prayer that one day we'll look back on gatherings such as this one and say that this is where some of the finest chapters of American and indeed world history began. This is the place where it began. We look forward to continuing to work with you to help communities heal, unite, and rebuild. So thank you and Godspeed.
Thank you so much for those powerful words, Melissa, and for your ongoing leadership. We're so grateful for you. Now on with the program.
We have before us a momentous opportunity to create the world's first truly interfaith nation. We need to build American Medina, a city on a hill made holy by the wideness of its welcome, the strength of its bonds. Look at its shining. The Catholic university where Muslim immigrants learn, the Jewish hospital where Hindu babies are born. The eyes of the world are upon you. We need to build a Sangha whose chants of loving kindness change the climate, bridge divides and bind hearts. We need to build the beloved community where we see each other, the Baptists and Mormons who farm fields and fight fires together, the witnesses who watch over the whole block. We need to build the New Jerusalem, tents for angels to dwell, tabernacles for the tribes. 12,000, 12 million. They will not cease to be diverse. They come from across the earth, seeking the sacredness of knowing one another. Every refugee a pilgrim, every stranger a friend, until we are a nation. This Interfaith America, pluralist Rashtra, diverse democracy, achieving our country, where our hopes are prophecies, where we offer langar to our friends and our enemies, where we do not wait for sickness to pray for one another's health, where we defeat the things we do not love by building the things we do. We need to build.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you. Man, there's this beautiful line in the Islamic tradition, God is beautiful and loves beauty. And I mean, look at this room, right? Look at this room. To the Georgetown chaplains, thank you for demonstrating again and again that this is a laboratory for interfaith cooperation, this campus, and a launching pad for interfaith leaders. Thank you. To Melissa Rogers, who is off to build religious freedom and interfaith cooperation elsewhere, thank you for your friendship, for your partnership, for highlighting what we, I think, feel in our bones, that a new chapter begins here. This is a moment a new chapter begins. I believe this is a momentous day in the history of American religion. And to my friend and mentor, Jim Wallace, you know, I picked up the soul of politics when I was a second-year student at the University of Illinois in 1994, 1995. That summer, I traveled through Catholic worker houses. I came and I stayed at the Dorothy Day House in the summer of 95. I showed up at Sojourners asking to speak to Jim Wallace, and an official-looking person said, he's on book tour. He is literally in the office one day this month. Today, you will never get any time with him. I'm like, you have no idea who I am. And I looked up his address, and I went and sat on his porch. And he came home, and that was the first exchange in a 25-year-long conversation of what faith in action together could mean for ourselves and our world. And so there is no other person we would want to host and no other place we would want to inaugurate this moment in our history. The United States is the world's first attempt at religiously diverse democracy and the most religiously diverse nation in human history. We're trying to do something that has never before been done. Build a truly inclusive and just, multiracial, multi-ethnic, interfaith nation. Will faith express itself as a barrier of division, a bludgeon of domination, or a bridge of cooperation? Will our religious diversity contribute to our fragmentation, or will it strengthen our trust and cohesion? Will we become an ever-expanding city on a hill, our mosques and our churches, our temples and our gurdwaras, our synagogues and our sanghas and our secular humanist societies working side by side toward a common life together? Or will we be at each other's throats? I believe the fate of the American experiment, indeed, as Melissa Rogers suggested, The fate of diverse democracy around the world perhaps hangs on that question, on what we do, on who we become. Every great issue in American life, civil liberties, racial equity, environmental stewardship, women's empowerment, every single one has one or more vital civic institutions dedicated to its advancement. The goal of Interfaith America, the institution, is to partner with organizations across sectors, people of all faiths and philosophies, to strengthen Interfaith America, the nation. We make this change, announce this graduation, if you will, in our 20th year of operations as a formal organization. In that time, we have built a network of over 600 campuses actively advancing interfaith cooperation, published 8 books and hundreds of articles, trained thousands of leaders, run programs in partnership with the White House and Fortune 100 companies, been on stages with presidents and in church basements with emerging leaders, played our part in addressing national crises from vaccination to racial justice, ideological polarization to climate change. The young people we met on campuses a decade or more ago are now influential clergy, award-winning authors, organizational leaders, government officials, all of us dedicated to one dream, the dream of Interfaith America, a shared sacred story where we all thrive. Our work on campuses will continue and grow, as will our work with student leaders. We add to that interfaith work in health, in tech, in racial equity, in the growing movement of bridge building with government agencies and with private companies. Next Tuesday, we will be with Vice President Gore and a group of religiously diverse African American leaders discussing the intersection of interfaith cooperation, racial equity, and environmental stewardship. The next day, we will launch our Vote is Sacred initiative alongside President Bush in Dallas. In his final sermon, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. imagined himself floating across the arc of human history and wondered in which era he would most like to live. He floats past Prophet Moses parting the Red Sea, past Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato teaching in Athens, past Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation. He selects the era in which God has chosen to place him. He is fully aware of the tumult and divisiveness of his times, but he believes that God is moving in a special way in that moment, and a real difference can be made in the nation and the world. I feel much the same way now. There are indeed gathering dangers on the national landscape, but America has always been defined by the response of its best people to its worst elements. I am reminded of the ugly anti-Semitism and anti-Catholicism of the 1920s, and how a group of interfaith leaders gathered to say no to religious bigotry and yes to interfaith cooperation. They spread their civic activities around the nation, and they gave us the gift in their era of a new national narrative. They called it Judeo-Christian. Judeo-Christian did good work for nearly a century. Today, we begin a new chapter, a chapter called Interfaith America. Hudafis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu, as always, for your leadership, for your vision. I know I speak for so many of the Interfaith America team to say we love working with you. Thank you for leading us. I'd like to welcome our panelists for the next portion of the program. Thank you so much to Peter Manso, who will be our facilitator for this conversation, to Montse Alvarado, Sabrina Lynn Mutley, and Rabbi Joshua Stanton for their contributions.
Well, Ibu Patel was a tough act to follow. They needed to bring up 4 of us to do so. So even then, it's going to be a challenge. My name is Peter Manceau. I'm the curator of American Religious History at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. And I'm also a product of interfaith engagement here at Georgetown. I'm a 2013 graduate of Georgetown's program in religious pluralism. So thank you to Interfaith America and Georgetown for bringing me back here and for having us here for this conversation. Well, following Ibu's inspiring remarks, we wanted to take this opportunity to explore some dimensions of Interfaith America, not just as a new chapter in an important organization, but as the idea that has brought us all together today. So we're going to just discuss a little bit, what does Interfaith America mean in practice? As the curator of religion at the National Museum of American History, Interfaith America is, for me, first of all, a historical fact. The diversity of religious thought and traditions is not a recent development in the United States, but is among the original and most enduringly fundamental aspects of the American experience. From the beginning, we've been shaped by ongoing engagement of competing and conflicting religious beliefs and practices. This engagement has often been volatile. Sometimes it's been violent. Sometimes it's been inspiring. Always, it's been mutually transformative. In a way, the story of America has always been the story of Interfaith America. But Interfaith America is not just a historical fact. It's also a present and active reality, a reality that exists and we experience in a number of dimensions. For the sake of this conversation today, I thought we'd focus on 3 of those dimensions: the cultural dimension, the communal dimension, and the legal dimension. And fortunately, Interfaith America has brought some wonderful conversation partners to explore those ways of thinking about Interfaith America. So I wanted to begin with my Smithsonian colleague, Sabrina Lynn Motley, to talk about the Smithsonian's engagement with Interfaith America, specifically through the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, of which you are the director.
Yes. So first of all, thank you, Ibu, for bringing us all together. I have the sense that he just wanted to throw a party and gather his greatest friends, and you certainly have done that. I have I have the honor of being on the steering committee for the Black Interfaith program. So I have been both challenged and inspired by your work. To your question, the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, for those of you who don't know it, started in 1967 as a sort of a way to ask who owns, who contributes to the American promise. It is a question that we continue to ask. We take place every summer on the National Mall of the United States. It's the place where Martin Luther King called us to the beloved community. It's also the place where January 6th, people gathered to march on the Capitol. It's that history that we carry with us every summer. We bring practitioners, cultural practitioners, artisans, cooks together in what we call an exercise in cultural democracy. Faith has been part of our experience since the very beginning, whether it's songs, garments, ritual. We hosted literally hundreds of Muslims after 9/11, that first summer. We have had ancestral practices. Really, we have had everything there in the mall. And the one thing that we haven't done is thought about it concretely. And this work that we're doing together with Ibu, Interfaith America, is calling us to think about the Folklife Festival, the Smithsonian, and how we can bring people together. Next year, we will host a program called Creative Encounters, Living Religions in the U.S. And it's a way for us to crystallize many of the things that you all have talked about today. And I hope that you will not only join us, but contribute to this work. It speaks to, I think, the mission of the Smithsonian. It speaks to the compassion and possibility of an institution that is certainly much more than artifacts and collections. And I hope that it also reflects the possibility of this country. So I'm really excited to be here. I want to thank you again, and I want to also, raise the flag for culture. It has an important role to play.
Really, one of the really beautiful things about the National Mall and the Smithsonian that frames it is the way that it does bring together communities from all over the country and all around the world. And communities seem to be, for many people, where this work of interfaith engagement began. Planning charity works between your church and the synagogue next door. That way of interacting with people in your community who you may not meet with every weekend, but you do find a way, communities find a way to do that type of outreach. So I wanted to bring in Rabbi Joshua Stanton from the East End Temple in New York to speak a little bit about the community's role, religious community's role in the work of interfaith engagement.
There are multiple dimensions that this role can take, and one of them relates to intra-religious pluralism. Another relates to pluralism as it plays out on our streets and in the public square. And then a third relates to families. I want to start with the familial aspect because the first thing I'm going to do after this extraordinary party that Ibu is throwing is teach a class of Intro to Judaism for people who are pursuing conversion. And what always comes up for those individuals is how do I show up in grief for my parent, for my sibling who is Catholic or Muslim or Buddhist, now that I am trying to be Jewish. And my responsibility as someone who believes deeply in pluralism and also who is faithfully Jewish is to help them find their boundary and walk all the way out to the edge of that boundary, to show up at the Catholic funeral for their mother of blessed memory, perhaps not to engage in all of the rites, but to be there fully with their families, and then figure out what rituals they need Jewishly in order to feel whole inside. And then in the public square, I will say one of the best kept secrets, and at a moment of great pain for the Jewish community, right as we were entering pandemic in December of 2019, January of 2020, there was a spate of anti-Semitic incidents in New York City. And what no one mentioned is that the organizers of key rallies in support of the Jewish community were Muslim. And that was testament to Interfaith America itself. And they said to me, you showed up for us at key moments. We're here for you. So there I am trying to get sleep and relax as a rabbi at the turn of the year. And I'm getting calls from my Muslim colleagues saying, we are throwing a rally for you. You had better show up. And that is Interfaith America in the public square. And then perhaps the most difficult is Interfaith America as I see it between Jews and within religious communities. Because I think we all know from experience the most painful rifts are familial. So how do I show up for a Satmar in Williamsburg when theologically and philosophically and in so many dimensions of my humanity, my life could not be more different? And I think one of the great challenges and opportunities is walking to the edge of our boundaries as they exist within our very particularistic microcosm and understanding what we have in common with other people who, at least in name and in reality, share our faith.
I don't want to miss the opportunity to have you say a little bit about, so I did some research about all of you, of course, before we joined today.
Not guilty.
So I'm very interested in the story of how an evangelical pastor convinces someone to become a rabbi.
So you're going to get me weepy. Ibu always gets me weepy, but the Reverend Dr. Paul Sorrentino, who is Director of Religious Life at Amherst College, is an essential reason that I am a rabbi today. And he saw that I was giving more and more of my time to the Jewish community. And his office was right next to a shared religious space, the Cadogan Center for Religious Life. And one Friday night, he was working late, and I was spooning vegetables onto someone's plate at a Shabbat dinner. And he called me over, and I was worried I was doing something wrong with my kitchen utensils or something. And he said, have you ever thought of being a rabbi? And I was kind of dumbstruck. It's not every day that an evangelical pastor asks a young Jewish student if they've considered becoming a rabbi. And after getting over my disbelief over a period of years, Paul has been an essential mentor for me. And from his standpoint, he was living out his faith to the fullest. Not just his job as director of religious life, but he was helping me find my faith. And from his standpoint, there could be nothing more Christian about it than bringing a young Jewish person into relationship with God and into relationship with religious life. And Paul remains a dear and beloved mentor. I spoke to him last week. And so this rabbi would not be here without an evangelical pastor.
It's a wonderful story. I think that for so many of us, interfaith engagement begins with that first person, very personal interaction that opens up a whole new world for us. Unfortunately, we are often faced with these cultural and communal expressions of American religious life. They often need protection. And so I wonder, I'd like to bring in Montse Alvarado from the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty to talk about the legal dimension of Interfaith America. Is the law where the rubber meets the road in terms of religious interaction in America?
You know, it's always fun when you start my introduction with "unfortunately." It's a part of, because that's exactly what it is. It's so unfortunate that in this country, and for me as an immigrant, choosing this country as my country for this reason, because this American experiment and this young country got this thing right. This idea, I loved that phrase in the prayer this morning. The clash of ideas is the sound of freedom. That's why I do religious liberty work, because it's not about the answer. It's about being able to ask the questions and engaging with each other and having these conversations and having these interactions that further our faith journey. They further our closeness to God. And the reality is that without religion, religious liberty means nothing. If you don't have a literacy to understand your neighbor, to know how to be sensitive, but also how to bring them into deeper faith themselves, not because you're imposing what you believe, but because you're proposing a path and fostering and nurturing their path. And the law on paper protects that. On paper, our founders got that right. But in practice, we don't know each other, we don't value each other's humanity, and we're not furthering each other's human flourishing. That's the problem right now. The division and the polarization forces us into this unfortunate place where we are fighting in courts. Most of the time fighting governments, even more unfortunately sometimes fighting each other. And the both of those debates in the law are also painful. They're painful because we forget that these cases aren't just about two different ideas about where the country should go. They're about people's lives. And the stakes are really high because they're about people's lives.
You raise a really good point, and it's something that echoes something Melissa said as well, that the interfaith work is hard. And it's hard for good reason. If we were all just getting together and hoping for the best, we wouldn't really affect change, right? So it's how do you all in your work deal with the competing needs and desires of not just the religious sphere against the secular sphere of the state, but competing and conflicting religious needs sometimes. How do we negotiate that in American society? I'm sure we're going to solve this right now.
Hopefully not through litigation.
Yeah.
That should be the last resort, right? But through dialogue, through encountering each other, this incarnational reality that we have here, getting together and not waiting until you have a problem to develop the relationships in your community. That to me is part of the work that the Becket Fund does, is fostering that encounter, asking people to get to know each other before you have this moment of conflict.
I wonder about rooting the conversation in the reality and belief of the individual. There was a statistic that I heard recently that 65% of Americans are both pro-choice and pro-life. What that means is we are actually not listening to 65% of Americans because the conversation has been depicted in a way that ignores the individual beliefs that get someone to that perspective. And so I just wonder about hearing the individual stories, hearing the individual perspectives, because the moment we move to ideological frameworks and catchphrases and slogans, we lose the humanity.
It seems that that's something that we try to do at the Folklife Festival, is foster that encounter. And in some ways, it reminds me of at least my definition of creativity, it's that place where grace and darshan, that sort of divine gaze, being present, and this notion of possibilities all collide. And that's part of the encounter. You have to be present. You have to, when we're sitting close to each other and we're making something or we're eating something together. We often think that those are really simple acts, but they're very nuanced and complex and filled, if they're done right, with compassion and connection. So I think we're all sort of floating in the same sea, trying to make this place where people cannot turn away from each other, but toward each other.
We may have to have this conversation offline sometime, but working for the Smithsonian, an instrumentality of the federal government, how does engaging with religion become complicated in that environment for you?
Well, I think the mission of the Smithsonian is the increase and fusion of knowledge. And so we have taken that and sort of run with it. It's a very broad mission, and religion, faith, ethics are certainly part of that increase and diffusion of knowledge. And, and the practice, the materials that come out of it, all of that is something that I think, again, the Smithsonian is in some ways duty-bound to engage. And we've both been privileged to have the support of the Lilly Foundation and others who make that work possible. And fortunately, Lonnie Bunch, the secretary, sees that as an asset as well. So I see it as very much our sort of collective calling. And while it's true, the federal part of the institution sometimes makes that challenging, it doesn't make it impossible.
The mission of Interfaith America as well, specifically the increase in diffusion of interfaith knowledge, for the increase of religious literacy, which is what we all rely upon if we're ever going to find ways to live together. So I wonder if you could all just comment briefly, and this will probably be our last question. What does the future of Interfaith America as an organization mean to your work? How will you look forward to engaging with Ibu and his colleagues, and what does the future look like for you?
Rabbi Jonah Pesner is here, and he is somebody who is a big believer in community organizing. And that means finding the unlikely ally. So who is the person who sits across the aisle from you, who disagrees with you about 99 out of 100 issues, with whom you can build a coalition about that one issue that is in common? And that, in my mind, is the essence of Interfaith America and the possibility of religious life in America. What are the coalitions that we can build? What is the good we can do together? How can we work together, even if we fundamentally disagree on a great deal? And who is not yet in this conversation, who would be in the conversation if we were willing to meet them where they are?
I think that for us in the religious freedom advocacy role, it's the religious literacy piece that you mentioned that's so important. If you think about all of the statistics out there, people don't understand what religion is, where it comes from, what the religious impulse looks like. Interfaith America puts that on display in a very human way, in a very genuine way. And that's critical, because if you don't understand the religious person, if you don't believe that someone could have their gaze on the far horizon rather than just inward, then the reality is that you can't possibly understand how that manifests itself in daily life and how it needs to be protected or sometimes left alone by government. So I'm very much looking forward to that engagement and to seeing this flourish.
And I echo what you both said. I think, sort of practically speaking, next year at the festival, we're working together on programming, and I hope that it is the start of a very long relationship where we learn together. And that we bring people, again, together on the National Mall to explore this Interfaith America in ways that they may not have thought. And I think that's going to be really, to me, the most wonderful thing, if we can spark people's compassion and also their curiosity, so when they go home, some of the things that you all are working with continue to feed them.
Well, that seems like a good spot to leave that. So thank you again for having us, and we look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for that rich conversation. That was wonderful. Our next speakers will all speak from their own religious perspective on what the vision of Interfaith America means to them. So please welcome Dr. Simranjeet Singh, Farah Pandith, Dr. John Inazu, and Joshua Dubois, who will each share their thoughts in turn.
Good morning. I was watching NBA playoffs with my nephew last night, and he's a junior in high school. We're talking about his friends going to college, and one of his best friends is a golf phenom, and he's been that way for several years now. And he committed to Virginia Tech. He's very excited, and we were talking through his disappointment, and he said, a lot of the schools he went and visited, he liked the teams, and they ultimately turned him down with the phrase, he wasn't a good fit. Now, he will be the first turbaned Sikh to play NCAA golf. So he's still excited, but there's something in there that's also heartbreaking. About 6 years ago, the same kid, when he made it onto the national stage, said something to me that really resonated. He said, we were talking about him potentially going pro, and he said, I can't. And I said, why not? Of course you can, like the possibility. And he said, well, I wear a turban. How could I go pro? I said, first of all, this is golf. What difference does it make? But there's something really powerful about what he could imagine for himself, what he could dream as a kid. He was 12 then. And I dismissed it. I mean, I had felt the same thing as a kid, but you grow older and you say, okay, we can break these barriers. And you also forget. And here he comes back to me last night, and he says, it was true. I mean, he didn't say that, but I remember that conversation from when he was a kid. And it is true. And we know that. The question, I think, is where do we go from here? We've come a long way. The American context, what we see with religious diversity, is beautiful in many ways. But there's still a lot to be done. Not too long ago, and not far from here, Dr. King shared a vision for what he wanted for his kids. And he talked about them being judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. We know that. And there are many other kinds of differences that continue to divide us. We know that too. Religion is one of them. But here's the thing. Human diversity is a fact of our reality. Religious diversity is a fact of our reality. That's not going away. That's not changing. What needs to change is our ability to engage with that reality. Audre Lorde has this insight that when I first encountered it, it really resonated with my worldview as a Sikh. But when you're raised in a tradition, you kind of take things for granted, and then someone cool says the same thing. You say, okay, I get it. So Audre Lorde says, it's not our differences that divide us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. It's simple, right? It's not that profound of an idea. My 6-year-old understands this language, right? Our recognize, accept, and celebrate our differences. It's really simple. But sometimes the most profound insights are the ones that are the most simple. The most transformative moments in our lives are sometimes just reminders of what we already know, but have forgot to put into practice. So the challenge before us is, how do we build? As Ibu has asked us, how do we build? How do we create the conditions so that we can acknowledge, accept, and celebrate these differences? It's what Interfaith America has been doing, showing us for 2 decades. How we create the world that we want for our children. It's the work that so many of you in this room have been doing. Right, last night I was with my immediate family. This is chosen family, right? We're in this together. What we want for our kids is the freedom for them to be who they are. That's it. We want them to be happy. And part of that work is removing these obstacles that we've encountered and maybe we've forgotten, like the one of my nephew and his sports dreams. I want to close with just a brief reflection on what it means for us to be in this room together. When Jim opened about being in person and the energy, I mean, one of the things that I think many of us have forgotten over the years is what it means to journey together. We do this work on our own. We may have done it from our living rooms. We may be in our offices. But this work is not about any single one of us. It's about all of us. And I think that's the precedent that Interfaith America, Interfaith Youth Core, Ibu and Mary Ellen and their whole team have really shown us in what movement building looks like. And that's why I'm grateful to be on this journey together with all of you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm deeply honored to be with you here today at the launch of Interfaith America. I could not be happier for my dear friend Ibu and the incredible team, a family really, of dedicated, focused, and compassionate human beings. Our nation is so lucky to have you all working across America to reinforce ties that bind us together, to seek new solutions for our communities, to expand dialogue and pluralism, and to showcase the power of each of us to make a difference. When you started this work, it was important, but today it is critical for our future. The mission to reinforce, enhance, and build strong human societies is soft power at its best. I've spent the majority of my life working inside of this space as a diplomat, and I know what it takes to find common purpose. Thank you for what you have done and what you will do. In the Islamic tradition, gardens are frequent reference points in the description of paradise and throughout Islamic poetry, music, and art. In their natural beauty, we can see many things and discover some important lessons. On Mother's Day, I was seated outside in a garden with my 82-year-old mom. We were near a tree that had been dead for some time. Mushrooms are now growing in a beautiful pattern on its bark. There are no leaves, so the top branches are bare. The tree stands erect, but it's dead. A few months ago, I noticed a woodpecker hopping up the mushrooms and working hard at something. It was making a hole, and it was loud work. Wood dust was building up in a small pile below it. The woodpecker kept coming back to the tree day after day. One day, it seemed to have completed its work. The result was a perfectly round small hole. And to my great shock, yes, I was inspecting its work every day, she, or he, had also carved out a cavern inside of the trunk, a refuge, a place of rest and protection. It was absolutely beautiful. But weirdly, the woodpecker never came back to live there. Then one day, I noticed something happening at the hole. A chickadee was going inside and outside of the hole, back and forth, back and forth. I wondered if it was building a nest inside the cavern and wondered why the woodpecker didn't fight for its territory. After all, it had done the work. But had it? Or was it just part of a larger project? The chickadee had indeed built a nest and apparently laid eggs, and from those little eggs, little birds had been born. For on Sunday, I witnessed their heads peeking out from the hole, chirping at their parents, asking for food. The work of the chickadee to raise a family was nonstop. It was in and out of that hole, feeding its young and watching the hole for predators. But the chickadee would not have had this nest for its babies had the woodpecker not provided a place of protection and ease. Even in a dead tree, there is life. Even when work is done for one purpose, it can impact others. Even though the garden was filled with other distractions that one could see, glorious roses, lilies, and peonies, it was important to listen for all kinds of sounds in the garden, not just from the loudest voices. So many forces contribute to the entirety of the garden. In America today, we hear all kinds of sounds. On our devices, radio, TV, there's a lot of noise, frankly, more than just soft chirping, I'm afraid. We hear voices of discouragement, anger, hate, righteousness, and divisiveness. It can feel overwhelming. But in this moment, our nation can have a different experience. We need to look into what we think are old, dead trees. Places that seem to have had better days. Places that may seem outdated. Places that seem prosperous. Places of worship, study, and community. Places that are established vehicles for action but do not have the things that they require to create new opportunities that will provide new outcomes. New generations require fresh attention. They require a way to connect to those that are different. Communities need to believe that there are ways to come together. Individuals need to be inspired to lead, to learn, and to leverage their friendships. I think a lot about our task, our hard work that we have to complete together, making spaces for others who are different from us, providing protection, giving refuge, offering something but not expecting something back. Doing what we know we must do to complete who we are, and keeping our focus on the possibility of what can happen because of our steady focus, dedication, and drive. And Interfaith America is a place for all of us, even those who may be standing erect but are empty inside, even those who fear difference, even those who do not fit into the mainstream places of dialogue and connection. To enhance an Interfaith America is to support communities that we must get to know and to fortify the ties within new generations. Our garden, from sea to shining sea, can be filled with new sounds, sounds of interest and respect for each other. I know firsthand that we can do this building when we have a vision that includes an openness and a willingness to create something that has not been created before, when we have to carve out a hole in a dead tree. May you have the strength, focus, and the partners you need to do this sacred work, Ibu. Congratulations to Interfaith America.
Well, good morning. When Ibu and Mary Ellen invited me to speak, they encouraged a poem or a song. I'm a law professor and a Presbyterian, so I'm going to be reading a text. When I think of Interfaith America, I think of the opportunity for Christians like me to engage with confidence and compassion in a world of difference. This is an opportunity captured in the verse that Pastor Tim Keller and I selected as the epigraph to our book, Uncommon Ground. From Ephesians 4, verses 1 and 2, Paul exhorts Christians, walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love. Paul's charge to Christians applies to anyone seeking greater empathy and understanding without minimizing significant differences. I wrote about these ideas in Uncommon Ground, and I'd like to share with you a few words from that book that I think capture some of the spirit and vision of today's event. Many of our differences matter a great deal, and to suggest otherwise is ultimately a form of relativism. But we can still choose to be gracious across those differences. When we demonize the other side, we miss important insights that can only be learned through charitably understanding a different perspective. We lose the possibility of finding common ground. Seeking common ground not only advances common interests, but also bridges relational distance, a lesson that I've learned from my friendship with Ibu Patel. Ibu and I speak, teach, and write together. We talk about each other's backgrounds, families, and dreams. We debate theories of change in great books. We laugh at each other's jokes, at least the first time we hear them. And we mourn together. After my father was diagnosed with cancer, Ibu checked in regularly with phone calls and texts. And when my dad died, Ibu was one of the first people to reach out to me. Ibu's prayers are quite different from mine, but I am grateful when he prays for me. My friendship with Ibu is one example of how we can find common ground even when we sometimes lack a shared understanding of the common good. My hope is that in the years to come, more of us will also continue to pray for one another as we seek common ground. I'm grateful for Ibu's example and for Interfaith America's ongoing leadership as we work to live faithfully across our differences. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. Such an honor to be with you this morning, and huge congrats to Ibu and the, I'm about to say IFYC, to the Interfaith America team. I'll be very brief. We've heard from some amazing speakers this morning, and I'm ready for my brother Jim to bring us home. But the main thing I want to convey is I'm encouraging everyone to remember this moment. There were probably some folks in New York City, February 12th, 1909, who were gathering with some amazing leaders, including W.B. Du Bois and Ida B. Wells, for a meeting about the transition from the Niagara movement to the NAACP, who really didn't capture the gravity of that meeting. But that was one of the most important meetings and gatherings that ever happened in the history of the movement for racial justice in this country. Look around us here. I want you to pick out a book or a light or someone that you're sitting next to, or remember a phrase from one of the speeches that you've heard today and hold on to that. You are here for the launch of Interfaith America. Yes, certainly built on a couple decades of phenomenal work, but heading towards something big. Savor that. This is special. Yes, we're in a beautiful library and we're about to go off to our meetings and Zooms and all the other things that we have to do today, but savor this moment. This is something special, and something big is coming around the corner, because something big always comes when people from different religious backgrounds get together to push for change. I'm mindful of how important interfaith movements were across our history, and we've heard some of that today, from Christian and Jewish women marching for suffrage to the Black Christian pastors in the civil rights movement, but many of them were mentors of mine, people like C.T. Vivian and Joseph Lowry, and they always reminded me that they were descendants of West African Muslims. That was in their DNA. to the movements for change today in our streets, in our universities, in the halls of Congress, and more. There's something catalytic about that interfaith spirit, but now that spirit has a formal home and a brand that makes sense and an infrastructure and a power to push us forward through the rest of this century. So I am so excited, Ibu. I'm excited for all that is to come. So remember this moment, friends. This is something special. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll just say, wow, that's for a religious response. What a day. This could be a historic day. But that's up to us. That's really up to us. So the team asked me to do a call. In my tradition, that's an altar call. Don't worry, I won't ask you to come forward. But this is about going out and what we're going to do. So the team asked me to tell a story. So let me elaborate on one that was already told. Years ago, as I heard it, this kid came to our office today. You're here one day and then back out. And he expected an appointment. And he didn't make one. I said, okay, what did he want to talk about? Oh, I don't know, we didn't ask. Did he make an appointment? No. Okay. But I came home that night about 9 o'clock, long day, and this kid is sitting on the stoop of my house. He had figured out where I'd lived, not to be deterred. There's an example there about what it means to be people of faith, not to be deterred. You never have been one ego to be deterred. So, can you give me 10 minutes of your time? I said, sure. It became more than 10 minutes, and we had countless more than 10-minute conversations since that day. Those talks were about the vision for organizations. Then the starting of organizations, the management of staff. Of course, that's always easy. The raising of money. And then they became about the balance between traveling to speak and time to write and being at home to run an organization, which was becoming a movement, I could tell, around the country. And it was always, how does a leader raise up other leaders? That's a big question for our organizations. And then after new and joyous moments, how to be a good husband and father, especially as a public figure. I remember calling Ibu once on Thanksgiving Day just to tell him how thankful I was for him, which became a very emotional conversation. So I'll just say what I most admire about Ibu Patel and most deeply agree with him about is his understanding that just coming together as interfaith leaders and people is important, but it's not enough. Coming together is not enough. Coming together across all these boundaries we've heard so eloquently today of our many faith traditions is indeed good for a better understanding of each other. But the world needs more from us than that. And the God who comes to us in many names also wants more from us than just hanging out together. Coming together is good, but doing what our faiths call us to do and say is better. You heard of the nuns, fastest growing denomination in the country, NONS. And yes, they're all in my classes, they're all at our events. They're not against religion. In fact, most believe in God. But they don't see religion saying and doing what even they know it's supposed to say and do. They're looking for us to do what we say. So, the world needs our faith, and we must find the courage to act on it, even when that could be risky and costly. Will religion inflame our polarizations? Or will we help put out the fire and calm the waters? I want to say as clearly as I can on this hopefully historic day, religion can block. Religion can be the biggest block to a peaceful, multiracial, multicultural, multi-faith future. We could be the block. Or we could be what enables that to happen. And at our best, we could even lead the way. So, how do we do that? Just a few examples as we close. The crucial global vaccinations that are critically needed now will require interfaith leaders to make that happen all over the world. It will require interfaith leaders. Reversing the dangerous direction of climate change needs our many faith traditions to tell our stories of the creation and what it means to be good stewards of that creation against all the powers of economic interests that will let that happen. With migration and immigration becoming a global way of life now, only the faiths that treat the stranger and the other as neighbors can overcome our human tribalism. With global inequality causing such great suffering and undermining global stability, we all must name our prophets, who all were willing to judge nations and rulers by the way they treated the poorest and most vulnerable. That's our test of them, and we should judge them for it, as all our prophets did. On gender justice, it's real simple. Will religion be for women or against them? Will religion be for women or against them? In a world of conflict and war, weapons and words, will our interfaith leaders be just peace lovers, as we all are, in our statements, our sentiments? We're all peace lovers. But will we be peacemakers, who have been called in my tradition the children of God? Finally, with democracy literally at stake, I'm old, more than any time in my lifetime. Democracy is existentially, literally, practically at stake, and that affects everything we care about. Will the spiritual foundation for a multiracial future in this country be led by those who actually believe that all human beings were made in the image and likeness of God? Do we believe that or not? Voter suppression is literally a throwing away of Imago Dei. That's what it is. And will the battles over things like voting rights become a test not only of our democracy, but also a test of our faith? and will determine the authenticity and future of all our faith communities. I will tell you, the young people that I know and meet at Georgetown and around the country and around the world, they're watching faith leaders. If we don't come down on the side of democracy, they're never going to show up again in any of our congregations. And they shouldn't. So, this world needs our faith, our faith as interfaith people and leaders. And that's also what God requires of us. And we must come together to do that in what Dr. King called the difficult days ahead. The big question for us on this historic day that Ibu has gathered us for is, what will the faith factor be? What will the faith factor be in all the issues that confront us? What will the faith factor be? History will write that down. A new generation of young people will be watching. What will the faith factor be? So the word blessing, of course, means favor and protection. So let us close today with a blessing. A blessing of favor and protection for the Interfaith America we've come to celebrate today. And for the key role that Interfaith America could play at this key time in history. So let us bless Ibu Patel, all the team. You're all over the place today. They go, I'm from the team. I love that. You're here. We are together a team. And let us all, in all our traditions, say amen and amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Wallace. And just a few notes of gratitude for me. I hope you all found this conversation meaningful, reflective, inspiring above all to carry you forward in the work that you're doing. A few notes of gratitude from me as we close. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing your insights and for inspiring us this morning. Thank you so much to Reverend Wallace. Thank you to your team at the Center on Faith and Justice. Jim Simpson and Isabel have been phenomenal partners. Please thank them. Just truly grateful for everything you've done for us this morning. Thank you so much to Ibu for your vision, for your leadership, for always pushing us to be more and be better. Thank you so much to the phenomenal Interfaith America staff. I feel so lucky to work alongside. Yeah, thank you. We truly do achieve as a team, and this event is just yet another moment in that celebration. And thank you all so much to everyone who's here, all of our wonderful partners here in the room, on the live stream. Everything we do is only possible because of our relationships with you. Thank you so much. For folks who are here, please join us for a brief reception afterwards. I know folks will want to connect. And just finally, thank you from Interfaith America. Have a wonderful day.